I just couldn't believe how hard it was to move to America.
And you're saying, I'd really like to move to the US. It's going to suck when you get here because costs are going to stack up.
Credit scores are the single most important thing in America for some reason.
I think the real important part is separate the business from the personal, because both of them are hard, but I think of them as two separate checklists. But the best part about the US is that if you do still want to live in the US, you can move to a different place and you can have a vastly different life.
We are back with another episode of the Do As I Say, Not As I Did podcast. And that name kind of explains everything. We're giving you advice based on everything we did or I did wrong the first time. Each week I just bring on smart people, founders, investors, product experts, technology futurists, sales gurus, and just about anyone who is really smart and can help us work out how to build a great business. And then together, that co-host or that guest and I, we answer the questions about what's going on in your lives and in your businesses. So either find those questions on Reddit or guests send them in, or audience send them in. But really, the one thing to know is that the guests have never heard these questions before. So they're just hearing this for the first time, just like you're hearing this. So if you do have questions or you're trying to put out fires in your business, send us through a question. We'll get to it on the show. Send those through to podcast@joeldtrapani.com. And I know you can't spell that, so it's just copy and paste it in the show notes so you can just take that when you want to email. I'm your host, Joel Trapani. I'm the co-founder and co-CEO of Vigo, which is an edtech scale-up. We've grown through Australia and the UK, and we're now focused on the US, which is the promised land. On top of that, I'm an advisor and a coach in the product space. I love helping startups and businesses learn how to build great product teams, because that is the secret to building great products. And that is something that I got wrong so many times. But today, I'm super excited to be joined by Josh Pugh, aka America Josh, which is a business founding, digital marketing focused, charity driving, community builder from South Australia. He's now living in New York City. Josh started his first company in 2005. He ran it for 8 years before selling it and moving to New York, where he founded and runs Fortnite Digital, a digital marketing consultancy. But it's actually outside of this that I discovered Josh's work. Josh is also the founder of America Josh, a definitive guide for expats, and it is a community and insanely valuable resource library for anyone moving to the US. And when I moved to the US, I was really lost and I had no idea where to start with anything. So visa issues, social security numbers, getting a license, credit scores, credit cards, getting a rental. To me, literally everything felt impossible and I just had no idea where to start. But I just read article after article after article on Josh's website, and slowly all this started to make sense on what I had to do and how I could actually live my life in America. So his resources are just super high quality. They're very informative, and they're approachable because of the way that they're written. Because I also found a bunch of stuff out there that was just so formal and bureaucratic. But Josh just wrote it like a person, which I loved. And he helps to make sense of a very unnecessarily confusing process, which is moving to America. So Josh is an absolute expert on what it takes to actually move to the US. So welcome, mate. Thank you so much for coming on the show today.
No, thank you, Joel. That's a sensation. It was always great hearing your life summed up in a couple of minutes. So thank you for having me.
Awesome, man. Well, before we jump into the questions, tell me, what are you working on right now? Where's all your effort going?
All the effort is going into, so America Josh is the more fun side of what I do. So yeah, Fortnite Digital is making websites, and it's all well and good. And I've been doing that for 20 years. So I've got that one pretty down pat. So America Josh has been good fun to try and grow into a bigger business. So right now what we're doing is we're expanding out of New York into the rest of the US. So we've got a presence in, I think we're at about 16 to 20 states. And we're like really trying to drive events and drive community in different places outside of New York City.
Man, I love it. This is just like an absolute genuine plug for me that content was just so valuable, because when I moved, I just couldn't believe how hard it was to move to America. Like getting there was just one thing, and that felt impossible. It took me 9 months. And then when I got to the States, I just couldn't believe how bad the information was and how crazy the systems were. Like, I don't know if I just got caught in a particularly difficult position, but my visa had recently changed at like a federal level, which meant that none of the like Department of Transport or the Social Security office and all this kind of stuff believed that my visa was real. And I used to have to like print out federal documentation instructions to show people how to override systems. Like it's just, it's wild how hard it is.
No, you aren't alone. That is absolutely for sure. We, all the way up to like on Friday, we had a few people come to one of our coffee events and they were saying, how am I meant to get a social security number without an address? And I can't get an address without a lease, and I can't get a lease without a bank account, but you need an address to get a bank. Like, it's a ridiculous system. And for me, yeah, I did the exact same thing in 2017 when I moved. I thought, this is insane. Like, it can't be this hard. But we get a lot of people that they don't need the answer necessarily, but they want to they want to feel like they're not alone. Like you just said, they want to make it sure that they can read something that shows them that all of these weird problems and all of this red tape is normal. And that's what we're finding. Like, a lot of our community just want to say like, oh my God, thank God I'm on the right path, because I thought I was going truly insane.
Going truly insane is how it feels. There is what that example you just gave is exactly something that I felt, that there was this one just crazy system that I had to experience, which was like, you couldn't get a license unless an American license or a form of ID, unless I had been living in my lease for 30 days. And I couldn't sign a lease until I had an American form of ID. And I was like,
yeah,
what?
You guys,
like, this
yeah,
is
it's like, guys,
crazy.
you have to see, like, you want to take the like landlord to the bank and be like, you two should talk this out, because it is insane that, yeah, this little back and forth is, and it's normal. Everyone goes through the exact same thing. It's been happening for, 20, 30 years or longer, because these systems have been set up that they do work once you get your first foot in the door. But until you get that first little break, until you find someone that's willing to either take a risk on you or like bend a rule, or someone more importantly that knows the rules actually, back as you said, you shouldn't have to educate everyone on the system, but if you can find that person that goes, don't worry, I've done this before, I know how to help you. So that's what we're trying to do. We're trying to give you the ammo to walk in and say like, I know exactly what I need to do and I know what the problems are.
I guess that gives me a good way to describe what it feels like to read your articles, because
Yeah.
I when I was out there reading the articles, I was freaking out, but then it just felt like, before I'd even met you, it just felt like Josh was there putting his hand on my shoulder saying, it's all right, mate, it's going to be okay.
We actually have our style guide for writing is, it's meant to be like you're sitting at a pub and you're sitting next to a friend at a pub who's like, you've got halfway through a pint each and you're like trying to discuss an issue and you're going back and forth and you just want to be told like, yeah, the how to do it. I found a lot of articles that would describe the problem and they'd say like, you just got to follow a few steps and you can get your own, ID, but they wouldn't say like, today you should, number one, walk into this address. Number two, fill in this form. Like, I was like, it has to be that simple, because people just, it's stressful enough. As you said, it takes months to get here. So once you've got here, you kind of want to skip some of the nonsense and you want to just get on with it. So we've tried to write all the articles. It's been really important that they are, and I'm really glad to hear that they sound like that, because that was very important when I was sitting there. I wanted it to sound fun. I want to like add little quips that are like, God, this is annoying, like in brackets. That's what I want to add, little notes like that, because it is frustrating and it feels good to have someone, a friend, even if it's someone online, that understands your problems.
So I just got reminded of this, but I'd love to see if you ever did this or you ever heard of someone doing this. But this is my biggest hack for someone moving to the US, and I don't know if I'd recommend it, but I'm going to. So the first day or whatever, I had to go to the Social Security office, which I walk in, and the line is crazy long. And I got there before it opened, and I finally get inside and I take a number, and I realized it was going to be a long time. So I had my number and I left, and I went and I set up my utilities. I went and signed my lease, and I went to a bank, and then I came back and I still waited for an hour and I got served.
I love it. Yeah, I think that's genius. I think you walk into, there's that and there's the DMV, where I don't know if it's the same in every state, but in New York, you walk in and you get a number and your number might be A123. And you look up on the board and it says like F 2703. And you're like, what? Like, where? Like, am I going to be here for months? Like, I think you've nailed it. I think yeah, you might be. You might have to come back tomorrow and just start again. But I think you nailed it. I think go have a coffee, go find a cocktail bar, like go get your lease, go get your ID, or go get everything else, and then come back is, yeah, genius.
I like it. Awesome, man. Well, let's jump into the challenges today. So I've tried to keep challenges very, America Josh related, or at least some of them. So this first challenge is called relocating to the US. I'm currently working as a software engineer, and we're currently working on a SaaS business and actively looking for clients. We didn't want to approach VCs and raise money yet. We want to grow organically. We did our research, and US Canada would be a good next step socially and professionally. We did our research and we explored possibilities to incorporate in the US. How do we properly relocate and deal with visa issues? What visa do we need? How do I even get started? It just seems like a lot. From Julia889.
Julia, okay. You're not wrong. I mean, this is again, the America Josh thing is like, you're not wrong. It's difficult. It's not going to be a walk in the park. I think the first thing I like to tell people is that the system is not set up in a way that it wants you, it's not going to succeed for everyone. So the first thing is that sometimes it doesn't work. I think if everyone can have that baseline, that to know that sometimes it doesn't work, sometimes it's just tough, sometimes you might have to keep trying for months or years to actually get there. Moving on from that, though, if you can get past that, so there are investment visas, and that's probably the pathway that Julia is going to go down. There's an E2 visa is, for example, the way to do it. So if you're willing to put in anywhere between about 150 to 500 grand, so it's not a cheap visa, but you need to be willing to invest in a company. Yeah, so this is if you're growing a business and you really want to get it up and running, you have to be willing to sort of put your money where your mouth is in a very literal sense. And you have to be willing to invest that in a company that will then spend that money. So that is money put out to risk. But it can be done. So the E2 is one way that you can do it. And there are other ways as well. If you're an Australian, for example, Australia has a special visa called the E3 visa, which allows us to get into the US. So it's one of those ones where you have to, the hustle starts, and this American hustle culture, New York and California, so there's this idea that everything's a hustle. It's got to start early, and it's going to have to start with some networking. It's going to have to start with some, getting your feet wet in the market right away. I mean, as you were saying, it might not necessarily be VC investments, but it's going to take some money, and it's going to take a bit of a slog, if I'm honest, which it hurts to hear sometimes, because you think I've got a really good idea and I want to share it with the world, and the US and Canada is a great markets, but they're big and huge and scary.
Yeah, look, first thing, Julia889, great job. You're putting yourself out there, and I love that.
Absolutely.
You're doing your business, and you're doing the research, and you're trying to do it organically and not just go straight down the VC path. That's a good choice, because VCs need traction anyway. So you're just probably setting yourself up for a good round anyway. So that's awesome. Going to America, that's good hustle.
Yeah. I mean, having the initiative or having the drive to want to do that, because it's as Julie's already found, it's tough. So you, knowing how big the market is, knowing how many competitors you've got, and saying I still want to do it, kudos. Don't want to miss that part.
So I would say moving to America for me was just as hard as starting a business. So
yeah,
not quite.
Doing both.
It sits up there. It's on the spectrum of that for sure. So I guess the advice I would give from my experience is just speak to heaps of people that have done it. Because everyone that's successfully done it wants to talk about their experience, I found. Because they're just holy shit. So find resources and find people. So check out America Josh. There's heaps of stuff on there, and talk to people. The next thing is that I found using an immigration lawyer very valuable. Now, I'd originally dealt with an immigration lawyer called LegalPad. They've now been purchased by Deal, but they are awesome. I love them. I then got moved on to a different immigration lawyer that I hated. So I won't mention their name, but LegalPad was amazing. So that they can actually help you understand specifically in your situation, what are your options? And the two options, or probably the three kind of key options that I kept learning about were O1 visas. And if you're in a startup, you might qualify for an O1 visa. And that's for exceptional talent or extraordinary talent or something
extraordinary
like that.
Talent. Yeah.
Extraordinary talent. So when you're in a startup, if you've had enough success in your startup, you can be deemed as an extraordinary talent. So that's a good one. It's a pretty expensive visa to get, to be honest. And if you've got a family, your O1 doesn't allow your family to come with you. So that's just one thing to note. The next one is a H1B or something like that. That's not a bad one to get, where you just go and work for another company. And they can be hard to get because the company needs to sponsor you. Then what I think, if you're an Australian, is the absolute holy grail is that E3 visa that Josh mentioned. Because America and Australia have this treaty where they'll just let Australians come into the country pretty easily. where you don't even fully need to get like expensively sponsored by a company. So you need to find a company that you could work for that is saying like, yes, we're going to let this person work for us, but they don't really need to pay for any of that. Like you can cover the cost. Like it's actually a pretty easy visa to get, and everyone I've spoken to said it's the easiest of all the visas that they've had in the past. But there is a hack with it. Okay, if you're in a startup, you don't want to go and work for someone else. You want to go and work on your own. An E3 visa can still work for you. I don't know if Josh even knows about this, but I found out this hack where I didn't incorporate my company in the US. I went and worked for a company called Deal, Deel. Deal is an employer of record where for your company they hire people in other countries for you. So I paid Deal to hire me in the US. So then I technically worked for Deal, subcontracting through to myself. So you can work around, sponsor yourself, moving to the US. So that might be cheaper than the E2 visa of 150K. But that's obviously if you, again, it's still somewhat expensive because you need to be earning enough money for that. So that's one option that I would suggest as well.
Yeah, no, I think it's like, and to clarify, like you don't pay for the visa, but you invest in the company. So yeah, you're gonna put some money into like some equity into the business that you're starting. That's where the money. But like, I think you're right. I think the point that you made about getting an immigration attorney is like really really important because I see a lot of people. And Julia, it's great that you're doing the research yourself, and it's good to get the knowledge to know what questions to ask because getting the ball rolling is the best way you can do it. But I will say the most important thing you can do is be willing to spend some money because if you're sitting in your home country and you're saying like I'd really like to move to the US, I really want to grow my business, or I just want to go move to the US, and you're talking about sort of scrimping and saving on the first step. So you're saying like, oh, I really don't want to spend $3,000 on an attorney. I really don't want to spend that money on, like when I first arrive, I'm trying to really keep the prices down. It's going to suck when you get here because everything costs, the costs are going to stack up. So you've got to be willing to put some money into it. Again, I'm not trying to be like America Josh has become like, I'm a bit of a realist. I want to put like the truth out there because I think putting too much of a rosy picture on things can give people the wrong idea. That being said, I think it's definitely possible. It's going to cost some money and you're going to have to put it out there so that you can then say, because as you were saying, Joel, it's about meeting people. So if you're scrimping and saving and not paying to, like, if somebody asks you to go out for a drink or someone asks you to go to an event and you say, sorry, I don't have the money for it, it means you've missed out on meeting someone like right out the gate. So that's going to be tough because then the next step is going to be especially difficult for you because like, how are you going to be able to afford to do the next thing? Like, how are you going to meet anyone if you don't go to the events? How are you going to then drive the business if you haven't met some people? So like, yeah, I think it's about being ready to take a few leaps. I think it's like save up. If you don't have that kind of savings, like wait for another year, get it really ready, get the momentum going, have the MVP locked down, have it all boxed up and be like, I am ready to roll up because the people that you're competing with here have been like this hustle culture. People have been doing it as a side hustle for years before you. Again, you can do it and we see people do it all the time, but you got to be ready for a bit of competition.
Yeah. I think it's going to cost you money to get in, and then when you get to America, it's expensive. Um, I don't know. Depending where you're coming from in the world, it's probably expensive. There might be you might be in a couple of places in the world where it's more expensive, but like America is an expensive place. So I don't think you need an immigration lawyer every single time you go to America. Like every single time you need a visa, but the first time, it's the process seems impossible because it's really complex. So I'll just say, just get that.
That and a good accountant to jump in. And if you're starting a business, get a good accountant because that you're not going to be able to work that out yourself. I promise.
Oh, that's actually a really good point. So maybe on that, when you move to the US, you actually then have to start paying tax in two countries. And it's really confusing. And you need to find accountants that have offices in your home country and the US. And it's actually a super complex system. So, my last piece of advice would be get prepared on that stuff earlier than you think. I wish I had I wish I had started looking at leases much earlier. I wish I had started looking at furniture, car licenses, um, building a credit score, getting in the account. Like start. I just wait till I got to America, and it took me ages to get started on anything, and that sucked. And actually, no, I'm going to add one more bonus piece of advice just so everyone knows this. Credit scores are the single most important thing in America for some reason. Every single thing you do, you need a credit score, and it's insane. And having a credit score is like kind of like this weird thing where you need a loan or a credit card to get a credit score, but you need a credit score to get a loan or a credit card. So get that as the day you get there, get a credit card, however
Yeah,
you
a
can,
secured
or
credit
a
card is
secure,
the way to go. Yeah,
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 it's a secured credit card. So because a credit score will having a credit score makes your life a lot better in the US because there is just stuff that you actually can't do in the US. Like you want to get a car, you probably can't. You want to like
take a
get a
business
good
loan,
lease.
start a business. Yeah, like any of that kind of stuff is going to require you to have some background, and it means you're going to have to be in the country for at least, normally we say 3 to 6 months before you'll actually even register in the system. So it's not going to be a day one thing.
Yeah, I was obsessed with the credit score when I got there, and it took me 6 months. Um, so I actually can't see a world where it's less than 6 months for people.
Yeah, we every so often we see people who sort of luck into, if you just happen to be entered into the system and it syncs up at the right time, it can be a bit quicker. But I was with you. I mean, obviously I'd started writing for America Josh, and when I first started writing my credit stuff, I didn't have a credit score. So I was writing articles on why it was like, I know all the theory. I know exactly what you're meant to be doing, but like there's nothing I can do right now. I just have to wait. So one day you log into, there's an app like Credit Karma that you've got on your phone, and one day you'll turn on Credit Karma and it'll say, "Hello, Josh, your score is," at that point, 500 or something. Like you actually have a number, which it sounds, as you well know, like it sounds super strange, but it is like a real, like, oh my God, here we go. Like finally I can start being a grown up.
Yeah, nice. All right, so I'll try and bring this one to a close here. So we covered a lot of ground here, so this is going to be a tough recap. Um, all right, Julia, you're looking to relocate to the US. It's going to be a tough gig, so get ready for a bit of a grind. Now, there's kind of like two phases to consider. One is like getting to hitting the ground in America, and then getting prepared when you get there. Getting to the ground, hitting the ground in America, the main thing that you need to do is get a visa. Now, a visa is a very complex process, and it is very specific to your individual situation. So the number one piece of advice is to surround yourself with the right people that have done it before, the right content, and an immigration lawyer, which can be pretty expensive. They can range from a couple of grand to tens of thousands of dollars, from everything, all the research that I did. But find someone that is good, that has good reviews, and go with someone like that. Follow their process, and as soon as you can, book in a meeting at the consulate near you, and then keep refreshing until you get an appointment closer to the time of day to when you're trying to go. So that's the most important thing. Okay, getting that visa, going through that process. That's a pretty tough one. There are multiple visas that could work for you. If you're from Australia, E3 is the absolute easiest, at least to get started. Then you can move off that one once you get here. Then once you hit the ground, it's also a pretty big task as well. And there's a lot of different things you can do. And I'd say the number one thing to focus on at the beginning, credit score. Then maybe the next follow up ones are a form of ID and a lease. And Josh has a lot of good information on his blog, America Josh, about that. So just read all those articles, but start much earlier than you think you have to start. And we probably covered a lot more, but I feel like that's probably enough of a recap. Is there
Yeah.
anything kind of major there, Josh, that I've missed?
I was no nothing major. I think I just, in hearing your recap, I think the real important part is separate the business from the personal, because both of them are hard and both of them have a lot of steps. So divide your, like, I'm moving to the US and expanding to the US into a, like, what would it take to get me there? And once I'm there, how could I start the business, or vice versa, whatever. But like, think of them as two separate checklists, because that is going to be fundamentally important to succeeding.
That's a really good point. Like that is actually such a good point. Just get you there first, and then let the business follow. Because it's I think it's easier in that order. You're going to have an
Yeah,
almost
I mean,
impossible
it
task if you need to
depends
get the
on
company
visas
there
and
first.
stuff, but yeah, whatever
Yeah.
comes first. But I think it's going to be like just acknowledging that you've got two quite unique processes that are going to be side by side, and you need to work out how they interact. So, an accountant and an immigration attorney are going to work well together because that's going to be a nice little stack of bricks that you need to put together to get there. Go for it, Julia. We believe in you. Stack of bricks. That was a terrible analogy, but we're going to stick with it.
We got there. All right. All right. Well, Julia, you've been advised. And we'll move on to the next question. This question is called, do you actually enjoy living in the US? I'm considering moving to the US, but I just have so many questions. How difficult was it to move? How long did it take to make your life satisfying there? And what was most annoying before moving? This is from Mortal Wombat, which is one of my favorite names so far. But I guess we could go back into getting prepped to go there, but I thought that was really interesting, Josh. Of like, do do you like living there? You've been there for a while, and how long did it take to get to a point where you enjoyed living there?
I love the question. I really do, because there are parts of it that suck. And I think it's, again, I hate sounding negative. I'm a very positive person, but I'm, again, like a bit of a realist when it comes to, like, I don't want to pretend, I don't want to sugarcoat. So I think Mortal Wombat. Okay. A few things. Every state in the United States is very different. It is like, and I realize that sounds like I'm not answering the question, but the reason I say that is because New York and Texas and California and Oregon and Washington are so vastly different from each other. So depending on what you want when you move, so if you're looking for wide open spaces and you want to go live in Arizona and you want to, have a big house and you want to have neighbors that like are far away, like you could potentially find a life that you really like. But if you move to New York and you want that, New York City, for example, you're going to hate it. So I think it's important to do your research and think about, like, where is it that I really want to go. For me, so I moved to New York City. So I obviously went to a very dense city. I obviously wanted the speed and ridiculousness that comes with New York. For me, the first, I say to a lot of people that you have 3 months, you have a bit of a high. So you ride this high that you get there and you're like, I'm in America. Like, I've done it. As you were saying, Joel, like it took me 9 months to get here, or it took me, however long to really just get all my stuff in order to be able to move. You finally get there, and for 3 months, I think most people have an 8 weeks to 3 month term where they're like, this is like just cool, because you're kind of like discovering new things. And there again, there's bumps because you don't know how to. For me, it was like I didn't know how to order a sandwich at a bodega, or I didn't know where to buy like bedding. I couldn't work out, like, how do I get bedding? Like, it sounds ridiculous in hindsight, but you'll find a few things. But on the whole, you're going into bars or you're going to parks that you've never seen before. You're seeing all sorts of new stuff, and you live in America. After that, there's a little bit of a dip. So there's a bit where you suddenly go like, ooh, it's no longer a holiday. It's, you live there. So suddenly you're like, I'm, slogging through crappy weather, or like, I don't know how to commute properly, or like this job isn't as good as I was hoping. Like, there's little things that'll come up and the shine goes off a little bit. The key is to push on, because a couple of months after that, and I think it takes honestly about 5 to 6 months to really find the rhythm that comes with, like, you've relocated your entire life. So I think after 5 or 6 months, you're either going to go, I get it. I've found my speed. I've made maybe a couple of friends. I've got working out. I've got my home set up. I feel comfortable at home. I like being at home on the weekends. I'm not going out all the time. It starts to feel a little bit normal. For some people, they'll get to 6 months and they'll be like, it hasn't gotten better. If you're someone that knows that, like, you can push through that, that's fine. But again, there's also sometimes maybe you're in the wrong spot. Maybe the neighborhood you're in, or the state you're in, or the city you're in, like, maybe that's not the fit that you were hoping for. But the best part about the US is that if you do still want to live in the US, you can move to a different place and you can have a vastly different life. And for me, coming from Australia, like, I'm from Adelaide. Like, Adelaide is nothing like Sydney, but they kind of are. They're like, it's a bigger version of Adelaide, yes, and there's more people, and like there's different stores and things, but like it's kind of the same. Like, you don't get a real cultural difference. Whereas like Louisiana and New York are nothing alike. So I think that's for me, Mortal Wombat. That's my my a bit of advice. I think you can slog through. It takes a bit, and yes, ultimately, I've now got a, a wife and a baby and a dog. So I've really I love living here.
Yeah. Man, what a great answer. I love that. I love just because, you can speak from your own advice, but also you're speaking to so many people there. So that's great. All I can add is my own experience.
Yeah, please. That's how I can add to my story. My pitch gets different every time because I can add yours.
I think the most important thing that Josh said is that every city actually is very culturally different. And that can make a big impact. And that's one of the major factors when you move, whether or not you're going to enjoy it. And I think the other major factor when you move that will change whether or not you enjoy it are your expectations. So depending on the expectations you come with, you could have an amazing time or a terrible time. And I think those two things really shaped my experience in the US because my, the year I spent in the US was a lot harder than I expected. And it's because I came with just very different expectations. It did take a while. Like there are aspects of the States that I absolutely love, but there were aspects of the States that I hated as well. But I also think that a big part of it is that it depends on where you are in your life and what you're looking for from the US. And my particular experience was just that it ended up being more challenging than I was expecting. So I moved to Austin, Texas, and I moved there because everyone was saying it's the new Silicon Valley, it's a new San Francisco. And after a year there, it's not. It's a cool city, but it's not that. So I came with this expectation of it is like the new tech hub of the world, and it wasn't. So I kept feeling like I was missing out of not being in San Francisco. So in hindsight, I should have just gone to San Francisco for what I needed out of my time in the US. So that was kind of, one thing I'd say is that I wish I had spent a bit more time in each city before I actually made the plunge to move. And I wish I was actually more open to moving once I got to the US as well. I wish I had signed shorter term leases when I first got there to give me the flexibility to try new cities. Um, the next thing is, I think if you're moving uh, as a single person by yourself, very different to moving if you're married or have kids. And I think that is one thing to consider as well, is that, uh, you know, I moved with my wife. And so moving meant that we had to find a city that culturally fit both of us and professionally fit both of us as well. And I think if you don't find that, that can make a pretty big impact as well. So that was a challenge for me and a challenge for us as well, because Austin and Texas didn't end up being great for my wife's career or profession either. So it was more of a struggle. And then the last thing I'd say is when I moved to the US, I had a different expectation of the country. I thought the US was like Australia. I was like, Australia, we've got a huge landmass. We we love democracy. We love capitalism. Um, we love the same TV shows and the same music, and we love Macca's or McDonald's as well. We're fat, just like America. It's the same. Um, but it was actually incredibly different. And the reason it's so different is that America has so many people that it's hard to actually understand until you're here. And there are states that are bigger than Australia, like from a population perspective. So when I came over like pretty judgmental, like America's got guns. That's so dumb. Like coming from Australia, like where we don't have guns, like there was just all these rules where I was just like, I don't get it. Like, how could you live like this? Why don't you just make the change? Why don't you just get healthcare? But when I got over here, I started to realize that like every state and every city is dramatically different from one another. And so you end up with these like huge, huge states like Ohio, which has like millions and millions or tens of millions of people of just like, middle of America, big agricultural state. Then you have New York or California, mega multicultural, super different groups of people. They want to be governed differently. The federal government system there doesn't work for that, and I don't know what would. So it's it's just like this a country full of like extremes and tension and uh and that's has the negatives but the positive of it as well. And so like, did I love living there? In some ways, I loved it. In other ways, it was a huge challenge. But the one thing that America has that I didn't realize until I lived there was that um, there's always 100% of the time this overwhelming sense of opportunity. Like at any point in time, the biggest opportunity in your life could just land right in front of you, and that's nowhere else in the world. And if that's what you're looking for, you'll get that going to America. So I don't know if I answered the question for Mortal Wombat, but that was my experiences for sure.
No, I think you nailed it. The idea, I love your point, and I say it a lot to people, is that you have to be, the expectation setting is vitally important. But more to the point, what you said around the idea that you've got to be willing for it not to work, at least, and be willing to change. Because if you go in, I know I met someone that came here and came to New York City, got here and did not like it, but had for 30 years dreamed of moving to New York City, had posters on the wall, had, bedding and pillows, like, a life that was like, one day I will finally get to move to New York City. So when they got here, they had the 3 months and they're like, riding this, like, I've done it, I've moved to New York City. And then after that, they were like, oh man, like, it's because this city, it stinks. There's like, the weather's kind of crap. It's either super hot and sweaty or it's cold and rainy and snowy. Like the like constant, like, there's trash on the ground. There's like, there are elements where you're suddenly like, wow, the rose colored glasses of moving there, it's not quite what I was expecting. It's like, this isn't the dream. And you've got to be willing to then say, and this person like eventually worked it out and is doing really, really well. But they, you've got to be willing to say, like, this isn't okay. I'm not enjoying it. Like, it's not what I wanted. And either say, like, I'm going to reset. I want to go back to my home country and like decide on where I'm going to go next. And you don't have to like go with your hat in your hand and say, like, I failed. It's not a failure. You did it. You moved. You gave it a shot. You pursued something that you were really excited about. So hold on to the idea that you are like, you succeeded in doing the thing. The fact that you've come back, or the fact that you've decided to change, is not a failure. It's adapting. It's changing your perspective of what your goals are. Try again if you want to, or don't, or realize, like I always said from the very beginning, that I had a wonderful life in Adelaide, and like, I still adore Adelaide. I think Adelaide is honestly like one of, if not the best city in the world, because it is balanced, it is peaceful, it is green, it is like, there's opportunities, but it's smaller, so it's like you can do stuff. So like, if I moved back to Adelaide, I told people from the very beginning, I don't see that as a failure. I see it that I've valued Adelaide. Like, it's great. What a great outcome. So yeah, I think your points about setting expectations and being real about it and talking to yourself, having a bit of a moment, sit in a park and say, am I actually enjoying this? Is this what I want? For me, I remember walking around the corner in about 3, or probably like 4 or 5 months in, walked around a corner at the beginning of spring, had a sunny day, sun came out, and I thought, like, this is the best. I am so happy with where I am. And I was like, this is good. But I can also understand if you don't have that feeling, then call it a day, do something else.
Yeah. All right. Well, let's bring this one to a close. So, Mortal Wombat, you think about you moving to the US. First thing I'd say, do it. Have a crack. See if you like it. You might love it, you might not, and that's also totally fine. But if you love it, amazing. If you don't love it, you'll love where you live now so much more. But do you actually love living in the US? It's different for every person, and it's different for every city. So as Josh mentioned, you got to give it time. You're going to have 3 months of rose-colored glasses. It's going to be novel. It's going to be amazing. You're going to dip after that. It's not going to be until about that 6-month mark where you actually feel settled and you feel like you live somewhere. You feel like you have some sense of permanence. So give it the space, give it the time, but know that, like, you don't have to love it. But if the city's right for you, you will. And if it's not, you can go somewhere else. And then just have the right expectations when you go there. Do your research, spend some time in the cities beforehand, try and work out which city is the culture that you really want to be a part of. Because every city is really culturally different. And then, yeah, just spend the time, meet the people, invest in trying to experience the cities, and just, I guess, you're not going to know until you live here, or live anywhere. So that's probably not an easy answer, but I think it gives the context that they're going to need. All right, Mortal Wombat, you've been advised. Now, that's all the time we have for questions, because Josh and I loved chatting today and we went a little bit over. So we are going to do the one last section of the show, or the newest section of the show, which is called Pitch Please. So this segment is a card game. So the Pitch Please card game is the official sponsor of the show. And to be fair, it is because it is a game I created. So I am sponsoring my own show, but it still counts. So, the card game is simple. We're both going to draw a random product card and a random customer card. And then we're going to, in 30 seconds, pitch a business, which is that product for that customer. Now, Josh has never played, and I play this all the time, but we're going to pitch the most absurd business we can imagine. So I'll go first, Josh, and then you can jump in, and then I'll give you your cards after that. So my customer card is my product card is social media, and it's for neighborhood Karens. So, all right. I feel like social media pretty much already is for neighborhood Karens, but let's give it a nuance.
Yeah, you got an easy one. Yeah, you just call it Facebook group.
Yeah. Okay. Karens. Very vocal, famously vocal, even. All right. Very strong opinions. Now, Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, these places are being ruined by the opinions of neighborhood Karens. Okay. People are getting fed up of seeing the nonstop negativity. Social media isn't inherently negative. It's the Karens coming in and feeding the system with their opinions about what they're unhappy with. So I'm creating a new social media specifically for Karens. When someone has a complaint, they come to this version of Yelp, to this version of Facebook, and they get to complain to their heart's content. Any of their desires are met here. The posting format is specifically for complaints. They're rewarded for the more negative they can be. So not only do they get to be surrounded with the kind of content they like, everyone else is freed of having to deal with their bullshit. And that's my business, social media for neighborhood Karens.
Love it. Love it.
All right. Josh is investing. Okay. So Josh's product card is a robotic arm, and it is for tarot card readers. I like it. That's not a bad combo.
Okay. Have you had the issue where you are giving a reading and you're having to present so many options to so many of your clients as your business booms? You need to grow. You need to find automated ways. AI is coming at you. Computers are coming at you in a world that is from pre-BC, where you've got a career that is thousands of years old. This is your way to move into the future. This is your way forward. This is your way to grow, the way to expand, the way to embrace technology is the tarot reading, AI-driven robotic arm. I've added AI because it's very important in this day and age because everyone loves a machine learning machine. It's going to flip the cards. It's going to shuffle the deck. It's incorporating technology because technology is becoming such a part of the world today that you need to make sure that the cards involve some of that technology to make sure they're giving an accurate reading. So not only are you going to save time and effort on tennis elbow or tarot elbow, as it's called.
Tarot elbow.
Not only are you going to save money and time on healthcare, you're also going to incorporate technology into the readings, making them more accurate and making you a better bet, and you'll get more clients because of this new robotic arm for tarot readers. So invest now in tarot arm, so that you save your tarot elbow, invest in tarot arm.
I love it so much. It's so good. You're bringing tarot cards into the 21st century. You're solving a serious medical issue, and you're ensuring consistency and accuracy on readings. They've never been so accurate.
That's the trifecta. We've got 3 icons. I'm making the website. Yeah, proudly sponsored by Squarespace. Check out our website at tarotarm.com.
I love that you came up with the jingle at the end, Save tarot elbow, invest in tarot arm. So good. All right, man. That's
fun. I like it.
We're going to wrap up with the very last segment of the show, my absolute favorite, which is plugs. Tell me, mate, what's going on? What do you want to plug today?
I'm going to plug myself because America Josh, we're doing good things across the US. So americajosh.com, we are the definitive guide to moving to the US. So we do everything from banking through to sandwiches. If you don't know how to order a sandwich in New York, we've got an article about that. If you don't know how to get a social security number, if you don't know how to get a bank account, if you don't know what a credit score is, americajosh.com is the way to go. We are trying to help people in a very genuine way, just to offer them the friend at the pub. It's the person sitting next to you at the pub that's offering you advice. It's the the mate that knows that because they've done it before. As Joel said before, it's all about finding people who are in your community, people who have done it before, people who have faced the problems. We're trying to build that community. So we've got events happening all over the United States. We've got coffees every Friday in New York. We've got coffees in LA. We've got coffees in Denver. We've got coffees all over the place. We've got drinks events happening all over this country. And we also, every year, we have the Big Aussie Barbecue in August in New York City, where we get hundreds and hundreds of Aussies coming and eating a real Australian beef sausage. So americajosh.com/join. We'd love to see you.
The thing that I missed the most when I was in America was a beef sausage. I couldn't believe how much I missed that. It was wild. And you can't get them there.
You can't, but we've got a, secondary plug is Aussie Pies and Sausages are a fantastic business who make pies, meat pies, and they do beef sausages. Absolutely fantastic out of LA.
That's so good. Awesome, man. I love it so much. And when you're reading Josh's articles, it's going to feel like that scene in Good Will Hunting where Robin Williams just keeps going, it's not your fault.
Oh my God, your fault. I need to make that just a little GIF in the corner that's just like,
yeah,
it's not your
that'll be so good. Mad. And then, on my side, as always, I only plug myself. So, like and subscribe to the show. Give it 5 stars. Get out your phone right now. 5 stars. Comment, only good comments. No negative comments on the show. Only fun jokes. And as always, steal a phone. I fully condone it. Steal someone's phone, subscribe and like on their platforms. They'll thank you for it. And thanks to everyone who writes in. We love the questions. So if you have a question, send them through to podcast@joeldetrapani.com. And that's it. I'm going to sign off here. So, mate, thank you so much for coming on the show. Thank you for arguing with me and laughing with me and sharing all this advice with people. It's so much fun. This has been another episode of the Do As I Say, Not As I Did podcast. We'll see you all next week.